Welcome back everyone, Oz here, and today I'm going to be going through r/TraumatizeThemBack, which is pretty much a revenge type subreddit with a few twists to it. It has similar vibes to an entitled people story mixed together with some revenge type shenanigans, so hopefully you all enjoy this one. This one's brought to us by Jokashi. Boss won't shut up about me not dating, so I give him far more information than what is necessary. Sorry in advance if this is not quite appropriate for the subreddit, but from what I've seen so far, it should fit well. For context, I'm an autistic 18-year-old male who started a new job late last year. Relationships have always been a touchy subject since I was bullied in high school for not being normal, in the sense of having romantic interests, and the fact that I don't like people makes me very scared for my future, as the idea of dying alone and not having a relationship terrifies me. Straight off the bat, my boss was one of those people who couldn't understand that not everyone in life is an alcoholic with a sex addiction. So, he would always be nagging me about whether I have gone out with my mates, or been out of the town, or was going drinking every weekend. I don't drink at all, and my friends and I meet like 2 times a year. His latest obsession at the time was asking whether or not I was dating. Not a simple, do you have a partner, but more of an incessant nag of, have you ever had a girlfriend? Did you date anyone in your high school? Do you have any crushes? Who was that girl I saw you with? Your girlfriend? And the list goes on. I eventually just tell him I don't actually like anyone, nor do I have the capacity to like anyone, as I have never felt the slightest bit of romantic interest in anyone my whole life. He obviously wasn't happy with this and decided to keep going on about, I'll meet a girl and she will change my life, and that I'll change my mind about not wanting kids, and so on and so forth. One day, he starts this again, and I'm really not in the mood, so I just do the usual, I'm incapable of having a relationship because I don't like people. He obviously pushes this matter, stating like some sort of expert how I just haven't met the right girl yet. So, I chip in with, no, seriously, last name. My therapist said that it's likely linked to my mother abusing me as a child. I probably won't ever like anyone, which is all true and actually what my therapist said. Needless to say, he was taken aback, kinda left his mouth open for a bit, and then eventually said, well, before trailing off and conveniently finding something else to do around the shop. Kind of brief, I know, but the priceless look on his face was worth it. He only brought up my biological mother one more time after this on the lines of, so what did your mom, whilst raising a hand, signifying beating. I just told him I'm not willing to talk about it, turning the already awkward conversation for him, that he started, into a very long silence. Since then, he's been more subtle with his probing, but never fully stopped, and it's been one of the many things me and my, much more understanding, colleagues have laughed about. How this boss in question made it into a position of management, I honestly couldn't tell you, because it sounds like he really lacks any social skills, professional skills, or, honestly, just personal boundaries. From the sounds of it, at least the colleagues are very well aware of kind of what's going on, and, he can kind of have a bit of kinship with talking with them, but I don't think the boss was being malicious. I really just think he didn't have a full understanding of personal boundaries, and it sounds like he just has general confusion or a lack of understanding about the fact that, beyond straight, gay, and bisexual and all those, you also have things like asexual and aromantic, where you're not really into people on a romantic level. And I think the boss just has never really encountered anyone like that, so it was just a puzzle that had to be solved, or, no one like this could possibly exist. That's just my 2 cents anyways. Doesn't excuse what happened, but hey. This one's brought to us by Eerie Deer. Ignore my medical issues and I get pissy. Oh no, it's the consequences of your actions. When I was in high school, my doctor accidentally let it slip that I'd been formally diagnosed with ADHD 4 years beforehand. My parents hadn't wanted me to use it as a crutch, so they just hadn't told me. I was furious and immediately pressed to start medication and getting education accommodations. My parents sort of sheepishly agreed to everything I asked for, and I started doing well for the first time ever. This is all background info. Sometime later, we had moved, and I was taking a freshman science class in my sophomore year because my old school had done what was effectively the sophomore science in my freshman year. I'm the 16th new kid, and doing standardized testing with a classroom of freshmen I don't know super well, and suddenly, I have to go to the bathroom. Now, my education accommodations allowed for bathroom breaks whenever, because the medication I was on at the time included fun side effects like bladder control issues. I raised my hand and asked the substitute teacher who was acting as our test proctor while our normal science teacher was on vacation. and she laughed at me. She said she wasn't born yesterday and no amount of accommodations would convince her to let me leave the classroom during standardized testing because I might meet up with a friend who had answers to the test or something. I tried to argue with her and got increasingly more desperate as I explained in hushed whispers what my medication did and its side effects. She continued chuckling and shaking her head with this stupid, bemused smile. I started crying, and before wouldn't you know it, I peed myself. Honestly, the next bits are a blur. I remember the smile slowly falling off her face, and then suddenly I was in the nurse's office wearing gym clothes and listening to my parents scream at the principal in 2 different languages. My parents agreed not to sue if the substitute was fired. She wasn't able to get a job in another school in the area, and the district apparently brought separate charges against her for ignoring accommodations. She had to pay a steep fine. Thankfully, some popular kids decided that anyone who made fun of me about this wouldn't be invited to the cool kid house party, so I was only teased a little bit. Still wasn't popular in high school, but at least my parents became somewhat more supportive of me and my educational needs as a result. Also, I hope the lady enjoys her unemployment as much as I enjoyed watching someone sign my yearbook a few years later to Hiss Girl. I actually had a similar experience to this that got me grounded back when I was in 5th grade. Granted, I wasn't on medication like this individual was, but we had finished something called PACE, which is essentially like an end-of-year kind of project that we had to do as a standardized practice in Idaho. And basically, throughout the entire day, we had to be giving presentations, we were sitting in rooms, we had to sit around, no chance for bathroom breaks, and we were fed lots of apple juice and lots of cookies, so I was pretty much ready to burst by the time that music class had come along. And I was sitting there in music class, had to go, asked to go to the bathroom. Music teacher told me that she didn't care if I wet myself, she could get me a diaper. And the moment she turned her back, I flipped her off. And because the classroom was full of bastards, they all tattled on me. And because they tattled, my dad found out and grounded me. So that sucked. This one's brought to us by Peanut Butter. Mess with the wrong orphan. A delicious revenge story. This is on behalf of my brother-in-law. Background: his mom passed away when he was in his early 20s. Now, we were all at a little gathering last weekend, and one of his friends brought along her husband. Husband is a huge Creed fan. We'll call him Fanboy. Fanboy is going on and on to brother-in-law about how he has to go to an upcoming Creed concert. Brother-in-law tries to politely shut him down. Nah, they're not for me. Really not my speed, etc., etc. Fanboy wasn't getting it. He kept insisting that brother-in-law was wrong for refusing to go to the concert. Finally, brother-in-law had enough. He turns to Fanboy and, in front of everyone, goes, "Dude, the reason I don't like Creed is because on the day of my mom's funeral, my now ex-girlfriend went to a Creed concert instead." Fanboy went white. He just looked and blinked at brother-in-law for a full 5 seconds, desperate to save face. Fanboy goes, "Well, at least you're married to your wife now, so that'll never happen again." Oof, buddy, a softball pitch, really. I brace myself for the inevitable home run, and of course it won't, since both of my parents are dead. Maybe the Fanboy will cool it next time, huh? Skull emoji. I do kind of feel bad for the Fanboy because he was probably just really excited, like, dude, come on, like, I love this music. You gotta give it a shot, man. There's no way you can't love this thing. Probably just really excited and want to have a good time, but at the same time, probably should have picked up on the fact that no does mean no, and he was being polite about it. Just left it there. Also, kind of like a semantic question here, but is someone really an orphan if they're like a grown adult who has lost both parents after they've like turned 18? It's more of a semantic thing, sure, but like, I guess I've never thought about it. Would that make my grandparents orphans? Like genuine question. I mean, he was in his early 20s, as stated in the beginning of it. Like, where does the line get drawn when you become an orphan versus when you're an adult who's lost your parents? Or, I don't know. I think I might just be overthinking this. This one's brought to us by Random Quality. Nurse complains my trauma wasn't painful, so I go into detail. So it's probably going to be a content warning for, medical trauma, so just be prepared. Hi, I just discovered the subreddit, and it made me remember an event that happened a while back for me. I, 17 male, had an unfortunate experience during an overnight stay at a hospital when I was 11. It was supposed to be a simple in and out for a smaller surgery, but I unfortunately had a nurse from hell. On the last day, I remember being in so much pain and screaming, but was not offered anything to calm me down when the nurse was doing some gauze removal without anesthesia. On top of this person just being a general asshole when I was asking any questions in general the day prior. Anyways, since then, I've had involuntary panic attacks when it comes to me seeing healthcare workers with anything sharp, even when I'm aware it won't be used on me. It's dwindled over time, but I still get some minor symptoms that usually takes a good few minutes for me to control. A few months back, I was at a hospital for a bad stomach flu. I had an elderly nurse take care of me, and unfortunately my shaking hands caused her to miss an IV insertion twice. I apologized and told her that I was trying to keep my arm steady. It's just hard because of a bad experience with another nurse. Now, she was visibly getting impatient with me, soon saying, "Young people like you can't have an experience that bad. You just need to be more patient," or something very similar to those words. I began to explain to her some parts of what had happened, just the minor details like how traumatizing it was for me. She looked disgusted and continued her rambling with the classical, "When I was your age, I wasn't this scared of needles and certainly can handle this sort of pain." It began to really bug me as she begins to talk up a small story of her own, having a high pain tolerance, to the point where I stopped paying attention to her. At this point, I just say, "So, you've had your gums feel like they were ripped open and your nurse did nothing to help you. That nurse also made an insensitive joke about sharp things too, so you can see why I'm scared of them. Sorry," along with an extra list of how the pain felt with some details that included the affected area. This nurse went rather wide-eyed as I started to go down the list, immediately excusing herself for being invasive of my fears. And luckily, she managed to finish everything quickly after that and leave the room. She didn't bother talking to me after that, apart from the mandatory medical questions, so I think I did a successful job there of getting her to quiet down. This one's brought to us by Das Bar. Didn't look pretty enough 4 hours after my mom died. This happened a really long time ago now, but I have never seen anyone run away from a situation quite so quickly, and sometimes I do wonder what the guy thought or if he learned his lesson. So my mom had been terminal and was in hospice care in her home. We knew time was limited. However, when I'm upset, the first thing to go to hell is my sleep schedule. I had slept for maybe 2 hours that night, and hadn't been getting much more sleep than that for the past few weeks preceding this, but she ended up passing slightly before 4 in the morning that this took place. So, after she passed, I decided I needed caffeine to get through the day, so when the nearest gas station opened up at 8 a.m., I headed over there for some energy drinks. I likely did look a bit of a mess. It's easy to tell when I'm tired, and I was wearing college merch that was much bigger than my usual size. I'd get out of my car and start shuffling through my clothes. I couldn't remember which gigantic pocket I had put my wallet in. While I did that, this man pulls up to a pump in a very shiny car. I don't remember what he looked like beyond that he looked a bit like a very put-together game show host. This man turns to me, he was 20 feet away, so this was all said loudly, and says, "It's a shame someone as pretty can't improve everyone's day with a smile." And I burst out crying. Ugly crying with the sobbing mouthing and shaking. Just went from standing there hoping I hadn't left my wallet at home to bawling in the most empty parking lot. I did manage to yell something like, "I'm sorry I'm not fucking pretty enough for you when my mom died 4 hours ago." Dude turned on his heel and left. Didn't pump gas, didn't go inside for coffee, didn't apologize, just got in his car and left. I was saved from standing in the parking lot sobbing by a woman who I think was jogging and heard what the man and I said to each other, and the employee of the gas station who were very kind. Edit. Some people seemed to be confused, thinking that being called pretty was a compliment, but really, I didn't look great. I was wearing a hoodie that literally went past my knees and sweatpants stuffed into duck boots. I had dark circles bad enough that someone asked me if a snowball hit me in the face a couple days after this. They thought I had 2 black eyes. My very long hair was piled on top of my head and hadn't been brushed properly. I also get big red blotches on my face when I cry or am cold. Considering it was January, I definitely had a blotchy face, even if it wasn't from crying earlier. Best case scenario, he was complimenting me first to sandwich critique. Worst case scenario, he was being actively passive-aggressive about how I looked. I don't think he woke up that morning and twirled his mustache wanting to make a stranger cry. I think he did an awkward thing he shouldn't have, don't tell women to smile, seriously, and got embarrassed. Something that's probably happened to literally every person who has commented or liked this. Now, the edits tell a really sad story that tell me that everyone in the comments was just like, why didn't you take the compliment? He was obviously just calling you pretty. She basically just encountered a Zap Brannigan type with the, you should smile more. You're prettier when you smile. And was supposed to apparently be happy about that. I mean, for context, think back to any time that you've been told to smile when you were upset and how much that irked you. And now add on top of the fact that her mother just recently passed away. That man deserved the awkward encounter, and I hope to God he never pulls that one out of his pocket again. This one's brought to us by True Difficulty 6291. Nurse said I was squeamish because I hadn't had children yet. I traumatized her by telling her about the illegal medical testing I endured as a child. Quick edit, I'd stupidly used female pronouns for the male nurse in the title. In my native language, the word for nurse is categorized as female, which is why I used her instead of him. Secondly, it's been pointed out to me that this person was most likely a phlebotomist and not a nurse. Sorry for the confusion. This happened a couple weeks ago. My fertility doctor ordered some blood tests for me, 34 female, and I went to my local healthcare clinic to get them done. I have trypanophobia, which I disclosed to the nurse who would be taking my blood. I always need to warn them because I can handle myself okay for around 10 minutes or so, but if the blood draw takes too long, I'm likely to vomit and or faint. I once very embarrassingly threw up on a nurse's shoes. The nurse looks at me like they don't believe me and asks if I have children. I say no. Keep in mind that the labels for my blood test have the word infertility in big bold letters, but whatever. The nurse goes on about how I won't be this squeamish once I have kids. And I'm pretty pissed off at this point as I can already feel a bit woozy, so I say very coldly, I didn't used to be squeamish about needles as a kid, which is why the doctors in my home country volunteered me for medical testing and training. My parents got paid while I was used as a human pincushion for medical trainees. I specifically remember the day they taught students how to draw blood from my neck. The nurse turned white and proceeded to wordlessly draw the blood, and because they took so long, I ended up throwing up, which they had to clean up. Maybe next time they'll learn to listen to their patient. Edit. A lot of people suggested I ask for an emesis bag. I actually had my own sickness bag with me that I used. It's just because the sheer force and volume that I tend to miss, which is always super embarrassing. For those that deal with similar issues, I also bring ice packs and ice water with me, which usually helps a lot too. Edit 2. Some people are confused by the infertility label. I was honestly confused by it too at the time, but it's with Kaiser Permanente, and their clinic has the word infertility in it, so most likely just a shortened way to indicate where to send it to. Edit. To clarify, I wasn't offended by the nurse's comments because of my infertility. It's the offensive and misogynistic assumption that my very real medical condition could be in any way related to whether or not I've given birth. Edit. I think I need to stop with these edits at some point, but just to clarify, they specifically mentioned childbirth, which is why I said it was misogynistic. As far as I know, childbirth doesn't cure trypanophobia. Being squeamish has nothing to do with it. I would clean up vomit and poop every day for the rest of my life if I could avoid another needle. There's a lot of ones in this episode about nurses just kind of not being good to their patients. Is there like a new trend going on or something like that of just nurses not really believing or taking their patients seriously? Or are these rare instances that are so worth note that it actually causes people to talk about it online? Because, I don't know, genuine question. This one's brought to us by BL Hart. Homophobic relative downplays my gay brother's love life, so I ban him from future ceremonies. This relative, I'll call dude, is super religious, Christian, and thus also was a Bible-thumping transphobe plus homophobe. Yes, was. He is starting to get better, but very slowly. My younger brother, I'll call LB for little brother, is both trans male and gay. For context, I'm his older sister, cisgender and attracted to men. Arrow and Demi, but attracted to men when my Demi shows. One day after I found out about my brother being trans male and gay, and accepting it immediately, he is my best friend in the whole world, so of course I accept him for who he is. My family, parents plus other relatives, found out later on as well, and so everyone was accepting except dude. So one day I decided to sit down with dude and ask him, dude, if my brother were ever to find love and get married to another man, would you be okay with it and attend his wedding? Very quickly he shook his head and replied, no, I would never stoop to that. Now, picture a very horrified and pissed expression from me. A simple no would have sufficed, but saying stoop to that? really got my teeth grinding. I have had a history of punching dude for his stupid comments. However, he immediately finished that sentence with, "But if you got married to a man, I would attend the wedding," with a huge smile across his face as if he didn't just insult little brother to my face. So, with the exact same energy he gave me, I shook my head and told him, "No you won't. I would never stoop to that." He was now horrified and shocked by my response, knowing I will not allow him to come to any future wedding of mine for the complete disrespect he made towards little brother to my face. As for my threat, I was 100% genuine. I don't lie when I get my revenge. I always mean what I say, and he knows this too. As I stated before, he has been slowly getting better, especially since he went through 7 years of no contact between me and him. Recently, he came back and told me he wanted to try to be better to me and my brother because he loves us and wants us in his life. So, I accepted, and I can gladly admit I haven't punched him yet for 4 years now. I think the silver lining here is that this family member, or dude as he's called in the story, is actually willing to change and grow from his actions because, a lot of them probably wouldn't. The fact that he is willing to grow as a person does show he does deeply care about, OP and their brothers' identities as individuals, which is more than I could say about a good chunk of people. I do think that re-asking and revisiting the stooping low to, attending a wedding between two gay men is definitely something worth poking at, but, I don't know, I'd be curious to get everyone else's thoughts and if they would forgive this family member or how they all feel about it. I'd also be curious to hear from some of the religious members of my community because I know that not all religious people are like this nor hold these kind of bigotries towards others, so, I'd be curious to poke at y'all and see what y'all think. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.